Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm doing my review of AEW's Dynamite. Starting off the evening, we have a Pinnacle segment. MJF is pretty much carried out to the ring like a king. MJF also talks about him being the best wrestler in the world after beating CM Punk not once but twice. MJF also goes forward and says that he praises Shawn Spears for his help with winning the match against CM Punk. MJF also said that it's time for him to be the new AEW World Heavyweight Champion. After that, Punk ends up showing up, and then Punk also says he has friends in the business. And here comes Darby Allin and Sting carrying baseball bats. Punk said that he pretty much wants a rematch, pretty much demanding a rematch against MJF and Wardlow. But MJF also pretty much gives, Punk an opportunity to have a tag team match later on that night, but he cannot choose Sting or Darby Allin as his tag team partner. All in all, though, this was a great segment for Pinnacle, though. Moving on from that, we go into our first match of the night. It is Wardlow versus The Blade. I thought this was a relatively decent matchup. Wardlow was pretty much keeping the pace throughout the entire match, with Wardlow hitting multiple powerbombs on The Blade, pinning him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Wardlow. Hats off to Wardlow for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have the Inner Circle meeting. Seems like Inner Circle is falling apart as of late. Jericho says that he's upset about not being tagged in the match that he had with Santana or Ortiz. Santana then goes on and says that Jericho is all about Jericho, and that Santana also says that Jericho has pretty much stolen multiple opportunities for both Ortiz and Santana when it comes to the tag team picture. Santana also says him and Ortiz are done with Inner Circle. Jericho then references Eddie Guerrero and how Eddie Guerrero was kind of, I wouldn't say selfish, but he was kind of going through a phase throughout his career, kind of blaming everybody else. Jericho then mocks Eddie Kingston. Jericho then mocks LAX. Guevara then says he wants to be the greatest AEW champion of all time, but really can't do that with all this drama going on in the Inner Circle. He ends up taking off the Inner Circle vest and walks away from the Inner Circle. And then Ortiz and Jericho get face-to-face. And it looks like next week we're going to have Santana or Ortiz versus Jericho and Hager, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. After that, we have a backstage, kind of a segment, if you will. The Young Bucks are backstage. They end up attacking Roppongi Vice. And then all of a sudden, we see none other than New Japan Pro Wrestling's Switchblade Jay White. And I was, honestly, man, I was astonished to see Jay White last night. I did not think that he was going to be the guy walking through the forbidden door. I do know that he was having issues with his contract with New Japan, and that he did not re-sign his contract, and that's one of the reasons why he showed up last night for Dynamite. I think this is huge for Jay White being in AEW. And it says a lot because, obviously with Jay White working with AEW, he can still work with New Japan. Obviously, he's having a match, I believe, against Eric Young in Impact Wrestling. This is huge. And not only is it huge, it also does bring around, it goes to wonder, is the Bullet Club going to come over to AEW as well? Like, are we going to get Tonga Loa and Tama Tonga to come into AEW? Are we going to get Chris Bay to come over to AEW? Vice versa. Different members from the Bullet Club coming into AEW. I don't know. But I will say this too. Adam Cole kind of said, the Bullet Club is forever. Maybe this is some kind of tension between Adam Cole and the Bucks. And maybe Adam Cole is going to turn against the Bucks. Because Kenny Omega's been kind of off the scene with injuries right now. And I know Kenny Omega and Jay White have had some words in the past. So with Adam Cole and the Bucks pretty much associating themselves with Jay White, this could be a whole, shift in power right now when it comes to the Elite. And Kenny Omega can kind of do his own thing and once again be a babyface when he does return to AEW. So great to see Jay White in AEW. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Isaiah Cassidy versus a mystery opponent. And that mystery opponent was none other than Limitless Keith Lee. Keith Lee came down to the ring with a humongous pop from the crowd. It was a relatively good matchup, man, but Keith Lee was pretty much controlling the entire match, with Keith Lee ultimately hitting the finish on Isaiah Cassidy, pinning him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Keith Lee. A couple things I want to say about this quickly, too, man. Number one, it is fantastic to see Keith Lee back in the square circle, and again, being with AEW. Obviously coming over from NXT and WWE, with him being in AEW, you can definitely tell that he was happy when he walked down that ramp to get in that match against Isaiah Cassidy. You know what I mean? I don't think Keith Lee had the same, happiness that he had when he was working with WWE, not in the main roster, not NXT, when he got to the main roster, they completely destroyed his character. They changed his entrance music, they changed his ring gear, everything was changed about Keith Lee. And the fact that Keith Lee walked into AEW last night as the same Keith Lee that we all love from NXT, I mean, it's fantastic, man. Sky's the limit for Keith Lee, and I do think Keith Lee will be a force to be reckoned with within AEW's roster. 100%, man. He did a fantastic job last night against Isaiah Cassidy, where looks like Keith Lee has not lost a single step from his NXT days. So, hats off to Keith Lee for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is FTR versus CM Punk, and his tag team partner is none other than Jon Moxley. Number one, I thought this was a great matchup. Back and forth matchup between both FTR, CM Punk, and Jon Moxley, with FTR keeping the pace of the match. Tully then attacks Punk. Punk then hits a GTS on Wheeler, and he also hits one on Tully Blanchard. And then Punk ultimately, like I said, hits the finish, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is CM Punk and Jon Moxley. Hats off to CM Punk and Jon Moxley for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Jade Cargill defending the TBS Championship against AQA. AQA is making her AEW debut. I thought it was an okay matchup. Back and forth matchup, but Jade Cargill was pretty much controlling the entire match, keeping the pace, with Cargill, pretty much hitting the finish on AQA, pinning her for the 3, and your winner of the match, and still TBS champion, is Jade Cargill. A couple of things I'm going to say about this matchup, too. Number one, Jade Cargill, a lot of people don't agree with Jade Cargill, personally. I don't have an issue with Jade Cargill. I think she's doing a fantastic job, and she's undefeated. And she's undefeated for a reason. I mean, she is a powerhouse in that women's division, 100%. And the other thing, too, that got to me was AQA. I mean, when she was interviewed before the match, she said that she was being trained by Booker T. I'm going to keep it a stack with you guys, man. I think she needs to go back and train a little bit more with Booker T. She did a horrible job in that match, in my honest opinion. There was no point in that match where she was even remotely taking control, and the match was okay at best. And I'm not taking anything away from Jade Cargill at all. She's obviously getting her feet wet in AEW. She's a TBS women's champion, and she's undefeated. But with that being said, it's still as if she's almost a rookie, and you're bringing in another rookie to kind of carry the match, where it can cause issues. It can cause problems. And I think that was kind of what we had last night between Jade Cargill and AQA. AQA, I don't know where, I guess, like I said, that she was working with Booker T. I think she needs to go back with Booker T and train on a little bit more stuff as far as in-ring ability, and maybe make a return to darker elevation. And honestly, I don't know why they pushed for this match for Jade to, defend the TBS Championship against AQA, because I can honestly tell you right now, I have never heard of AQA at all. And all I kept hearing the entire night throughout this match is that she was being trained by Booker T. And pretty much the entire match was controlled and pretty much dominated by Jade Cargill. So, hats off to Jade Cargill for getting the win in that matchup and retaining the TBS Championship. Moving on from that, we have an open challenge from Serena Deeb. It's like a 5-minute challenge. She ends up going up against Katie Arquette. It was an okay matchup. Deeb was pretty much keeping the pace throughout the entire match, with Deeb ultimately applying a submission on Katie Arquette, and your winner of the match by submission is Serena Deeb. Hats off to Serena Deeb for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of AEW's Dynamite. It is Adam Page defending the AEW Championship against Lance Archer in a Texas death match. Number one, I thought this was a fantastic matchup. Back and forth matchup between both Page and Archer, with Page keeping the pace of the match. Jake Roberts then gets involved, hits his signature clothesline on Page on the outside. Archer then hits a chokeslam on Page through a trash can. It looked absolutely brutal. Archer then hits a blackout on Page on the steel steps. Again, looked absolutely devastating. Page then hits a buckshot lariat off the ref's back on Archer, sending Archer through a table. And your winner of the match is Adam Page. After the match, though, Adam Cole comes down to the ring and pretty much tells Adam Page that he is the next person in line to challenge Adam Page for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. A couple of things I'm going to say about Dynamite last night, man. Dynamite was a fantastic show. Now, some people probably didn't like that Keith Lee showed up, and I don't know why you would be mad about that. I think Keith Lee coming over to AEW is absolutely fantastic. Now, I know a lot of people are saying that the roster's crowded. Look, man, you can sit there and say that the roster is crowded, and it very much, it probably is. But at the end of the day, they have a ranking system from the men to the women to the tag teams, and wins and losses matter. Now, credit, okay, if the roster's crowded, some people might not get booked in matches on Dynamite, but there's also Rampage, and those wins matter too. So, it's the best versus the best. And I think what Tony Khan is trying to do here, that I think some people disagree with, is that he's giving the fans dream matches and dream scenarios that would never happen for WWE, never would have happened for New Japan, Impact Wrestling. We are now getting that with this whole Forbidden Door from Tony Khan. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. I mean, think about it. We had Keith Lee join AEW last night. And then you get Switchblade Jay White from New Japan, showing up with the Bucks, showing up with Adam Cole, and pretty much beating up Roppongi Vice. And it does raise a lot of questions. Well, if they're bringing in Jay White, are we going to get, other members from the Bullet Club to come into AEW? It does answer, ask a lot of questions. It definitely does. And I'm looking forward to what's going to happen next with how Jay White is going to fit into the fold with the Elite, how Kenny Omega is going to feel about this when he does come back from injury. Is Kenny Omega going to do his own thing and turn babyface, get away from Don Callis and do his own thing? There's a lot of questions still yet to be answered when it comes to the Elite. And Keith Lee, like I had mentioned, Keith Lee is going to be a force to be reckoned with within AEW. And for him to come back and do what he's been doing, in this matchup, even though it was against Isaiah Cassidy, not taking anything away from Isaiah Cassidy, but to see him walk down to the ring with a smile on his face, and how bad WWE main roster treated Keith Lee. They changed his name, they changed his gimmick, they changed his entrance music, everything. I feel like last night when Lee showed up last night for AEW, I felt as if we got the same Keith Lee that we all gravitated towards in NXT. And it was absolutely fantastic. I think Keith Lee is going to do amazing things for AEW. But this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.